Issue 37 and 38 of our continuing series of Hachette Collection's Combat Patrol. Brace yourself for the Hellbrute. Hello and welcome to The Lucky Roll, an eclectic channel for eclectic games. And today we're going to be doing issues 37 and 38 of our continuing series of Hachette Collection's Combat Patrol. Now in these two issues you get the Chaos Space Marine Hellbrute, which is a fairly nasty looking thing. We'll have a proper look at him in a little bit, but before we do that we'll have a look at the magazines and see what we have in lore-wise today. Now of course issue 37 starts off with the how to build instructions. Now these are slightly more elaborate than what you would have gotten to up to this point. It's not overly complex, but the torso here now will require a little bit of dry fitting before you actually glue it together. So do it nice and carefully and just be a bit slow because it is actually quite a nice model. The lore is also interesting. It talks about the path to glory. So Chaos Space Marines are not just motivated by vengeance for what happened to Horus, but they've also been kind of motivated by selfish ambitions. So every Chaos Space Marine will kind of walk a path to glory where they're trying to get the attention of their patron Chaos God. And the more attention and rewards they get, the more powers they get. And in some cases, like say, you can see from Magnus the Red here, you become a Demon Primarch. Now, just because you're not a Primarch doesn't mean you can't get extra gifts. So you have here some of the other kind of dramatis personae of the Chaos Space Marines. So you have your standard Legionnaire here, who could be spending 10,000 years fighting as a Legionnaire since the Horus Heresy for favor of the Dark Gods. You have a cultist who has just been recruited, so he's hoping he'll probably just get murdered, but at some point in the future he hopes maybe that he'll get increased power. You have a traitor Astartes here who became one of the possessed, so he pleased his dark patron and was rewarded with demonic possession and mutation. So he's more powerful. He's not going to win any beauty contests, but he's more powerful as a result. You have here a Demon Prince, which is basically a Chaos Space Marine that has greatly pleased their Dark Champion and has been blessed with multiple powers and ascension, so he fights even harder. So these are real hard guys in the tabletop. You have this poor guy, kind of a cultist. He's just basically, the dark ritual went wrong and he kind of turned into that and gets to live like that for the rest of his days. Not nice. You have here kind of a Chaos Spawn from what was a former Chaos Sorcerer, and you have here the Hellbrute. So this Chaos Space Marine was forced screaming into the confines of a Hellbrute. Here he will remain until what is left of him dies, neither able to ascend or fall into damnation. So this is not a happy bunny. We have here the stories of the Dark Descent Part 2. And we have here some information and lore about the Hellbrute. Now, of course, you can kind of give a gaming background. So if you roll 1 to 2, he's tormented by memories of their former life before the transformation, or they've lost their mind, can only think of killing, death, and victory, or they're so dangerous that they may be bound by chains when they're not in battle. You have here the data sheet for it, and of course you have some core rules in terms of play and data abilities here. Now, you also get some Space Marine Combat Patrol rules. Now, these are good because for the first few issues you had Chaos Space Marines, Standard Space Marines and Tyranids. So it gives you kind of stratagems and combat patrol rules for the guys you have and how to use them. Secondary objectives, stratagems, things like that. So all very good information here. And of course, a little teaser of what's coming up where you can see that you're getting orcs and you are getting the Leagues of Votan. Now, issue 38 is the second part of the Chaos Space Marine Hellbrute. And in this one, of course, you get a paint guide at the start. So again, it goes through a fair bit. And you can do a lot of painting with the paints that you've acquired so far, up to a fairly good standard. You have here a little bit more lore on what's called Warzone Nephilim, which is basically a fairly nasty war zone because not only are the Imperium there, the Necrons are there, and Chaos also ended up joining the party. So you get an awful lot of really cool little information on this particular war zone here. And you get to see some of the main players in it as well, including the Ultramarine Primarch, Rabute Gilliman, Illuminar Caesaris, who will be one of the Necrons, and you have the Silent King, which will be kind of the head of the Necrons, and you have Ephariel Stern, which is one of the Sisters of Battle. So a really cool kind of war zone with some interesting stories there. You have, of course, more lore for the Chaos Space Marines, such as the Favored of the Gods. So some Space Marines will devote themselves to a singular identity, or a singular deity, excuse me. So you would have some that would devote themselves to Nurgle, some would devote themselves to Slaanesh, to Khorne, and whatnot. So if they kind of forsake all the Chaos Gods and promise themselves solely to one, you will get legions like the Death Guard, who of course have dedicated themselves to Nurgle, who is this guy, a really big, horrible, ugly, disgusting thing. He's kind of like the god of disease and pestilence, but he's also known as Grandfather Nurgle to his Space Marines and his devotees, because he values all life, including the type of life that will rot you from the inside and bring maggots out of you. So it's kind of, there's a nice interesting perversion to him there. You also have the Emperor's Children, who would be dedicated to Slaanesh, who are kind of dedicated to power, pleasure, and pain, and all sorts of sensation. And you have the Thousand Sons, of course, which would be one of my favorite Chaos Space Marines, and that are kind of dedicated to the Chaos God of Tzeentch, and would have an awful lot of kind of psychic ability. So a lot of interesting little bits and pieces here. You have extra stuff as well in terms of Nurgle. So you have the Feculent Gnarl Maw, where they can kind of have maggot-ridden trees sprout around them, releasing clouds of spores into the polluted area, which kind of gives an aura for the tabletop game, which kind of helps your guys and doesn't help the others. You have Poxbringers, who are just, well, these things are great if you're a Death Guard player, because they just soak up damage. They're cannon fodder of the most kind of basic form, but you can make loads of them and you can send them in one direction. They're great for holding points. You have the Plague Drones of Nurgle, which are just big disgusting flies with pox workers on top of them. Nice big nasty yolks. And you have Eroticus, which is a kind of a great unclean one. So they become among the mightiest of Nurgle's demons, and they're pretty much huge walking mobile tanks that just go into the middle of the battle. You have stratagems for them, and you have scenario 24, Gauntlet of Pain, which is a pretty cool scenario actually, because what you have is you have your Hellbrute versus a whole load of people, and if the Hellbrute survives to the end, you get a Hellbrute victory, and if it doesn't, you get to kind of see how he toughs it out. A pretty cool little scenario actually, and of course more advertisements for the following factions, and of course next week you will get 5 Wraith Guards, and after that 5 Chaos Terminators. But let's have a look at the Hellbrute himself. Now this is a kind of a really cool mini. This is the kind of the newer model of Hellbrute. There was an old Hellbrute model, which to be honest with you, I think looked kind of better in 7th edition Warhammer, where it was kind of more side and kind of corny. This one is more kind of Alpha Legion, so he's a bit more neutral. But of course you can see he's a big huge hammer, and he's just, the Space Marine has just mutated and burst into this kind of mix of machine and, well, Astartes. So I can't imagine that it's comfortable. I can imagine, if anything, it's only very painful. But he's kind of like, I don't know if anyone has seen RoboCop 2, but he's kind of like the bad guy in RoboCop 2, that he's just this big, huge, ugly, bulky thing. And of course, you can see here that you've got teeth, you've got eyes, you've got the big hammer, and you've got this teeny tiny head literally in the mouth of the Hellbrute, which is the poor Space Marine himself. But there is a lot of detail in it, and yeah, it's a fun thing to paint. You could use different skin tones for what you want. I just kind of went for, I believe, Kiev Flesh, and I just put Reichland Flesh shade all over it, and then kind of just brushed over again with little bits of flesh again. But you can go into lots of different layers depending on how much you want to get into it. And what's cool here as well is that you have room to kind of put wires going in and out of the flesh into the actual machinery part. So you can see that there's a lot of wires and bits poking out of it, especially here at the back, that there's a kind of, it's even like kind of like the cyber demon in the Doom games, in the sense that like he's just a mixture of machine and a mixture of horror and a mixture of what was a human being at one point in his life. And here of course you see this big kind of ugly spine going down the back. So this was a fun build, it was a fun paint, and again, because it's Black Legion, you can kind of fit them anywhere into any army, because they're not really tied to anyone in particular. But it does come with a lot of different options. So if you do decide to pick two or three of these magazines, you will have different heads, you actually have different weapons, you have different kind of, the pose is largely the same, but you can have other little kind of, say, shoulder pads or kind of different heads in the middle. So a cool little model, one I'm happy to have. And as always, if you enjoy these videos, please like, subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And until next time, this is Sean from The Lucky Roll, signing off.